nervous.
Think about it for a second. If you had just one legal night every year to chase love, would you spend it looking for a stranger, or would you spend it searching for someone who actually understands you? That simple question becomes the emotional heart of One Night Only. While the movie is marketed as a romantic comedy, it slowly reveals itself as a story about loneliness, fear, timing, and the hope that real love can still exist in a world obsessed with instant gratification. The outrageous premise is intentionally exaggerated. An alternate America where premarital sex is legal only during a single 12-hour period each year, creating a chaotic annual event that drives the film's comedy and romance. One of the biggest strengths of the movie is the chemistry between Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner. Their characters, Ali and Owen, are not introduced as perfect people. Instead, they feel like ordinary young adults carrying emotional baggage, disappointments, and expectations that never quite matched reality. Owen is still struggling after a painful breakup, while Ali has not completely given up on believing that genuine romance still exists. Their accidental meeting changes the direction of both their lives, not because they instantly fall in love, but because they slowly realize that someone finally understands the way they see the world. This emotional connection is what separates the film from many modern romantic comedies that rely only on jokes and physical attraction. Director Will Gluck has built a reputation for making romantic comedies that mix humor with heartfelt emotions. His previous films often balanced awkward comedy, memorable dialogue, and surprisingly emotional character moments. With One Night Only, he again tries to combine romance with a high concept fictional world. Instead of making the movie feel like a dark dystopian thriller, he keeps the tone colorful, energetic, and hopeful. New York City becomes almost another character in the story, filled with flashing lights, crowded streets, unexpected encounters, and countless distractions that keep the two main characters apart just when they seem ready to find each other again. The screenplay constantly plays with the idea that life rarely follows our plans. Every time Owen thinks he has finally found Ali, something unexpected happens. Every time Ali believes she has missed her chance forever, fate pushes her one step closer again. These repeated near misses create suspense without needing action scenes or dangerous villains. The audience begins rooting for them simply because both characters seem like good people trying to survive an impossible night filled with confusion, temptation, and emotional uncertainty. Visually, the movie embraces bright neon colors, lively streets, music filled parties, restaurants, rooftop locations, and city landmarks that make New York feel alive throughout the entire night. Since almost the entire story unfolds within a limited time frame, the cinematography constantly reminds viewers that every minute matters. Clocks, sunrise, empty streets turning into crowded celebrations, and changing city lights quietly reinforce the pressure of time running out. The supporting cast also adds variety to the story. Maya Hawke, Julia Fox, Ben Marshall, King Princess, Ziwe, Molly Ringwald, and LeVar Burton appear in supporting roles that bring humor, wisdom, or chaos whenever the main characters need an unexpected push. Instead of stealing the spotlight, these performances help shape Owen and Ali's emotional journey. An interesting creative fact about the film is that it originated from a screenplay by Travis Braun that was later rewritten and directed by Will Gluck. Universal Pictures announced the project in 2025 and principal photography began in New York City during the fall of that year. The production remained centered on authentic city locations, giving the movie a more grounded atmosphere despite its outrageous fictional premise. Another detail many viewers may overlook is how carefully the fictional world is constructed. Although critics have pointed out that not every rule of this alternate society is fully explained, the movie intentionally focuses more on the emotional consequences than on detailed political world building. The laws create the setup, but the real story is about whether two people can find something meaningful in a society encouraging quick decisions instead of lasting relationships. Early critics have been divided. Some praise the charm of Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner, saying their performances make even the strangest moments believable. Others felt the film missed opportunities to explore the deeper social implications of its premise and relied too heavily on romantic comedy conventions. Even among mixed reviews, many critics agreed that the two leads have strong chemistry and provide the emotional core that keeps audiences invested. One of the most talked about aspects online has been the movie's unusual concept. Many social media users immediately compared it to The Purge, except centered on romance instead of crime. Memes spread quickly because the basic idea is so easy to explain in a single sentence, making it perfect for internet discussions. Some viewers joked about how strange the fictional laws are, while others appreciated that the movie never takes itself completely seriously and instead embraces its own absurdity. Reddit discussions before and after preview screenings show many viewers were surprised that the film turned out more heartfelt than they expected. Perhaps the biggest message hidden beneath all the comedy is surprisingly simple. Love is not something that can be controlled by rules, government schedules, or even perfect timing. The best relationships often begin unexpectedly, grow naturally, and survive because two people choose each other every single day. Not because the calendar tells them they have one special night to make everything happen. One of the reasons One Night Only has generated so much conversation is because its premise is far bigger than its actual story. On the surface, it sounds like a wild comedy about a fictional America where single people have only one legal night each year to have sex. That idea immediately grabs attention because it feels outrageous, controversial, and completely unpredictable. But once the movie begins, viewers quickly realize that the filmmakers are not trying to make an action film or a political thriller. Instead, they use this bizarre setting as the background for a much smaller and more personal story about two lonely people who accidentally find each other when almost everyone else is chasing something temporary. The contrast between a chaotic city and a quiet emotional journey is what gives the film its unique identity. What makes Owen and Ellie different from the rest of the characters is that neither of them is actually interested in taking advantage of the annual event. They are searching for something much deeper than a one night encounter. Owen is still emotionally recovering from heartbreak and has begun questioning whether relationships are worth the pain. Ali, on the other hand, still believes that love should happen naturally and shouldn't be rushed by social pressure or government rules. Their meeting feels accidental, but as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the film is suggesting that genuine relationships often begin when people stop looking for perfection and simply choose to be honest with each other. The pacing of the movie also deserves attention. Since everything happens during a single night, there is always a sense that time is running out. Every wrong turn, every missed phone call, every delayed subway ride, and every unexpected interruption feels important because sunrise is getting closer. This creates tension without relying on explosions or traditional villains. The enemy in this story is time itself. Every minute that passes increases the possibility that Owen and Ali may never see each other again, making even the smallest conversations feel meaningful. From a filmmaking perspective, the production team made New York City feel energetic and unpredictable. Rather than using sound stages for everything, the film makes strong use of real city locations. Busy intersections, colorful nightlife, rooftop views, restaurants, apartment buildings, parks, and crowded sidewalks all contribute to the feeling that the audience is experiencing one unforgettable night alongside the characters. Cinematographer Yaron Orbach captures the city with bright neon lighting and moving camera shots that maintain the fast pace while still allowing quieter emotional scenes to breathe. Another element that quietly supports the storytelling is the soundtrack. Instead of constantly demanding attention, the music helps establish the emotional rhythm of the film. Upbeat songs accompany the city's annual celebration, while softer melodies appear during the quieter conversations between Owen and Ellie. The music reflects how their relationship changes throughout the night, shifting from excitement and uncertainty to comfort and hope. Critics have described the soundtrack as energetic and well matched to the film's fast moving atmosphere. The supporting cast also deserves credit for making the world feel larger than just two people falling in love. Maya Hawke, Julia Fox, Molly Ringwald, LeVar Burton, Ben Marshall, King Princess Zive, and several others appear throughout the story, each representing different reactions to the fictional annual event. Some characters embrace it with excitement, others treat it as just another holiday, and a few openly question whether the strange law has actually made society any happier. These smaller moments help the audience understand the world without lengthy exposition. One of the film's biggest strengths is its willingness to avoid easy answers. The movie never spends much time explaining exactly how this alternate society came into existence or how every detail of the law works. Instead, it focuses almost entirely on the emotional experience of the characters living inside that world. Some critics appreciated this choice because it keeps the romance front and center, while others felt the movie missed an opportunity to explore the fascinating implications of its premise in greater depth. That difference in expectations has become one of the biggest reasons critics have been divided. As for the film's release, One Night only arrived in theaters on August 7, 2026, distributed by Universal Pictures, with a running time of approximately 102 minutes and an R rating for sexual material, language, and brief nudity. At the time of release, no official box office earnings had yet been reported, so it was too early to judge its commercial performance. Before release, movie fans were already debating how the film might perform financially. Many online discussions predicted that the unusual premise could either become a surprise as hit through positive word of mouth or struggle because of competition from larger summer releases. Opinions varied widely, showing just how unpredictable the movie's commercial prospects were before audiences had a chance to see it. Perhaps the most interesting thing about One Night Only is that it isn't really asking whether one special night can change your life. Instead, it quietly asks a more meaningful question. Can real love survive in a world that encourages instant gratification? That question stays with the audience long after the credits roll, and it is probably the reason people continue discussing the film despite its unusual premise. As audiences left theaters, one of the biggest discussions surrounding One Night Only was not whether the story was funny or romantic, but whether its fictional society was believable. Some viewers loved the movie because it never tried to explain every political or legal detail behind its strange premise. Others felt that such an unusual concept deserved more world building. This difference in expectations created two very different viewing experiences. People who entered the theater expecting a clever romantic comedy generally found themselves entertained by the chemistry between the two leads. Meanwhile, viewers expecting a deeper dystopian satire often wished the film had spent more time exploring how such a society could actually function. In many ways, the movie became a conversation starter rather than a film with simple answers. One of the clever decisions made by director Will Gluck was keeping the focus on emotion instead of spectacle. It would have been easy to fill the entire running time with outrageous situations, over the top comedy, and shocking moments based on the annual event. Instead, many of the film's most memorable scenes are surprisingly quiet. A conversation on a nearly empty subway platform, a walk through city streets after midnight, and two strangers slowly opening up about their fears become more powerful than the loud celebrations happening around them. These scenes remind viewers that genuine human connection often happens in silence rather than in chaos. The performances from Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner continue to be the strongest part of the movie. Neither actor tries to make their character unrealistically perfect. Owen often makes awkward decisions, hesitates when he should speak, and struggles to move on from his past. Ali is confident in some moments but uncertain in others, especially when she begins questioning whether taking a chance on someone she barely knows is the right decision. Their imperfections make them feel authentic. Instead of watching movie stars performing romantic scenes, the audience often feels like they are watching two ordinary people trying to figure out their lives. The supporting cast also contributes memorable moments without distracting from the main relationship. Maya Hawke brings warmth and humor whenever she appears, while Julia Fox adds an unpredictable energy that keeps several scenes entertaining. Molly Ringwald and LeVar Burton provide moments of maturity and perspective, reminding younger characters that love has always been complicated, regardless of what rules society creates. These smaller performances help give the fictional world a sense of depth and history. Visually, the production team deserves credit for making New York City feel like a city experiencing its biggest annual celebration. Streets are packed with people, businesses stay open late, and every neighborhood seems to have its own atmosphere. Bright lights, colorful signs, crowded restaurants, music, and constant movement create the impression that millions of lives are unfolding simultaneously. Even though the camera follows Owen and Ellie, viewers constantly feel that countless other stories are happening just outside the frame. This attention to background detail makes the fictional event seem much larger than the main romance. Another topic that quickly became popular online was the movie's ending. Without revealing every detail, the conclusion avoids relying on an unrealistic fairy tale solution. Instead, it emphasizes choice over coincidence. Throughout the film, fate keeps bringing Owen and Allie together, but in the final moments, it becomes clear that relationships survive not because destiny does all the work, but because people decide to fight for each other. This emotional message resonated with many viewers and became one of the most frequently discussed aspects of the film after release. Internet discussions also produced countless jokes and memes. Many people humorously compared the fictional annual event to major holidays, joking about traffic, hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, and dating apps crashing under the pressure of one single night. Others joke that the movie imagined Valentine's Day turned into a national emergency. These memes spread because the central concept is so unusual that it naturally inspires humorous comparisons. Even people who had not yet seen the movie became curious simply because the premise sounded unlike any other romantic comedy released in recent years. Film critics also debated the movie's deeper themes. Some argued that it was secretly criticizing a culture built around instant gratification and temporary relationships. Others believed it was simply a fun romantic comedy using an exaggerated premise to entertain audiences. The interesting thing is that both interpretations can exist at the same time. The movie works as light entertainment, but viewers looking for deeper meaning can also find commentary about loneliness, modern dating, social expectations, and the difference between physical attraction and emotional intimacy. One small but effective filmmaking technique is how the movie repeatedly uses clocks, countdowns, sunrise shots, and changing city lighting to remind audiences that time is running out. Unlike traditional romances that unfold over weeks or months, every conversation in one night only carries extra weight because both the characters and the audience know the night cannot last forever. This constant awareness of time gives even ordinary scenes a surprising level of tension. Although the movie sparked debate among critics, there is broad agreement on one point. Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner carry the film with believable performances and genuine chemistry. Their relationship provides the emotional foundation that keeps audiences invested even when opinions differ about the film's larger ideas. In the end, One Night only succeeds not because of its unusual fictional law, but because it tells a familiar story about hope, vulnerability, second chances, and the courage to trust someone again. Another reason One Night only stands out from many romantic comedies is its willingness to let conversations breathe. Instead of rushing from one joke to another, the screenplay allows Owen and Ali to spend time simply talking. They discuss failed relationships, childhood dreams, family expectations, and the pressure of living in a society that seems obsessed with instant happiness. These conversations may appear simple on the surface, but they gradually reveal why both characters have become emotionally guarded. Owen admits that after his last heartbreak, he stopped believing that lasting relationships were worth the risk. Ali, meanwhile, struggles with the fear that waiting for real love may leave her alone forever. Their emotional honesty becomes far more important than the fictional event happening around them. One of the smartest filmmaking choices is the contrast between the city's energy and the characters' emotions. Throughout the night, New York is alive with music, celebrations, crowded streets, flashing lights, and people chasing excitement. Yet, whenever Owen and Ali share a quiet moment together, the noise almost disappears. The camera slows down, the soundtrack becomes softer, and the audience is invited to focus entirely on their conversation. This contrast creates an emotional balance that keeps the movie from feeling exhausting despite its fast moving setting. The editing also plays a major role in maintaining suspense. Since the story unfolds over only one night, every minute matters. Quick cuts between different locations remind viewers that time is constantly slipping away. As the night moves towards sunrise, the pace becomes faster, reflecting the growing urgency felt by the characters. The audience begins to wonder whether fate will give Owen and Ali another chance or whether they will become just another missed opportunity in each other's lives. Costume design quietly reinforces each character's personality. Owen's wardrobe remains casual and understated, reflecting someone who isn't trying to impress anyone. Ali's outfits are stylish without being extravagant, showing confidence while still feeling believable for an ordinary young woman. The supporting characters wear brighter, more attention grabbing clothing that reflects the festival like atmosphere surrounding the annual event. This visual difference subtly reminds viewers that Owen and Ali are emotionally disconnected from the excitement happening around them. The production design deserves recognition as well. Restaurants, apartment buildings, subway stations, rooftops, parks and busy intersections all feel authentic rather than artificially glamorous. Rather than presenting New York as a fantasy city, the filmmakers allow it to remain messy, crowded, noisy, and unpredictable. This realistic backdrop makes the romance feel more believable despite the highly fictional premise. Another topic that viewers noticed was the screenplay's use of humor. The comedy rarely depends on offensive jokes or exaggerated slapstick. Instead, much of the humor comes from awkward misunderstandings, uncomfortable first impressions, unexpected encounters, and the strange situations created by the annual event. Even when characters find themselves in ridiculous circumstances, the jokes usually remain grounded in recognizable human behavior. This approach allows the film to appeal to audiences looking for light-hearted entertainment without completely abandoning its emotional core. The movie also explores the idea that timing can completely change the direction of a person's life. Throughout the story, tiny decisions produce enormous consequences. Missing a train, answering a phone call, taking a different street, or choosing to trust someone for just a few minutes can completely alter the future. The film repeatedly suggests that life is shaped not only by major decisions but also by small moments that people rarely notice until much later. This theme makes the audience reflect on their own experiences and the unexpected encounters that have influenced their lives. Following its theatrical release, online discussions focused heavily on whether One Night Only could become a future cult favorite. While some critics were divided on the screenplay, many viewers appreciated its originality in an era dominated by sequels, remakes, and superhero films. The movie offered audiences something different, a romantic comedy built around an unusual idea rather than an existing franchise. For many moviegoers, that originality alone made it worth watching. Another fascinating aspect of audience reactions was how different generations interpreted the film. Younger viewers often focused on the romance and the chemistry between Owen and Ali, while older audiences tended to appreciate the broader themes about commitment, patience, and emotional maturity. This difference in perspective sparked countless discussions online, with many viewers sharing how the same scenes meant different things depending on their own life experiences. Although the movie never tries to provide a perfect solution to modern dating, it quietly encourages viewers to slow down. In a world filled with dating apps, instant messaging, and endless choices, One Night Only reminds audiences that meaningful relationships require vulnerability, patience, and genuine communication. That message feels surprisingly timeless despite the film's futuristic premise. Perhaps the film's greatest achievement is that it transforms an outrageous fictional concept into something emotionally recognizable. Beneath the comedy, bright lights, crowded streets, and unusual social rules lies a simple story about two people who are afraid of being hurt again, but slowly discover that taking one emotional risk may be worth more than spending an entire lifetime wondering what if. One of the most fascinating things about One Night Only is how differently audiences and critics reacted to the exact same movie. That doesn't happen very often. Usually, there is a general agreement about whether a romantic comedy works or doesn't. In this case, however, the response became much more complicated. Some critics argued that the movie's high concept premise was simply too bizarre to fully accept, while many early viewers said they enjoyed it because they stopped asking logical questions and instead focused on the emotional journey between Owen and Ali. This divide quickly became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the film after its early screenings. Many reviewers agreed on one important point. Monica Barbaro delivers one of the strongest performances of her career. She brings warmth, humor, vulnerability, and confidence to Ali, making the audience care about her almost immediately. Even in scenes where the screenplay becomes intentionally absurd, Barbaro manages to keep the character emotionally believable. Callum Turner compliments her performance by portraying Owen as someone who has quietly lost faith in love without becoming cynical or unlikable. Their chemistry is the reason many viewers stayed emotionally invested even when the fictional world around them became increasingly strange. Director Will Gluck deserves credit for understanding exactly what kind of movie he wanted to make. Instead of treating the fictional law as the main attraction, he uses it as a backdrop for exploring how modern dating has changed. Throughout the film, viewers repeatedly see characters searching for instant happiness while ignoring genuine emotional connection. Owen and Ali slowly become the exception to that pattern. They aren't racing against the clock simply because the annual event is ending. They're racing because they have finally found someone worth knowing before the opportunity disappears forever. Another interesting aspect is how the screenplay quietly explores loneliness. Even though millions of people are celebrating throughout the city, many characters still appear emotionally isolated. Crowded parties, loud music, and endless entertainment fail to eliminate the feeling that something important is missing from their lives. Owen and Ali gradually realize that loneliness is not about being physically alone. It is about feeling misunderstood. That emotional message gives the film far more depth than its marketing might initially suggest. From a technical perspective, the cinematography constantly reinforces this idea. Whenever Owen or Ali is surrounded by huge crowds, the camera often isolates them within the frame, reminding viewers that loneliness can exist even in the busiest places. Later, when the two characters finally share quiet moments together, the framing becomes more intimate and relaxed. These visual choices subtly strengthen the emotional storytelling without requiring lengthy dialogue. Another topic that generated discussion online was the fictional technology used inside the movie's alternate society. The film introduces the idea of government monitoring tied to enforcing its unusual laws, which many viewers found unsettling. Some appreciated this detail because it reinforced the dystopian nature of the setting, while others felt the screenplay introduced these ideas without exploring them fully. Regardless of opinion, these moments became some of the most discussed scenes after previous screenings. The release timing also attracted attention. Universal Pictures positioned One Night only as a major summer romantic comedy, opening in early August against several high profile films. Industry observers expected it to compete for audiences looking for an original alternative to franchise blockbusters. Before opening weekend, box office predictions varied widely, showing just how difficult the film's commercial prospects were to judge. Some forecasts expected a modest debut, while optimistic fans believed positive word of mouth could help it perform much better over time. At the time of release, however, official box office earnings had not yet been reported, so any financial predictions remained speculative. Perhaps the movie's greatest achievement is that it encourages discussion long after the credits finish. Some viewers leave thinking about the romance, others focus on satire, some debate the fictional politics, while others simply remember the chemistry between the two lead actors. Very few romantic comedies inspire this many different interpretations, and that may ultimately become one of One Night Only's lasting strengths. As the days passed after its release, One Night Only continued to attract attention because audiences kept recommending it for reasons that were very different from the marketing campaign. The trailers focused heavily on the outrageous concept, colorful nightlife, and comedy, leading many people to believe they were about to watch a fast paced adult comedy filled with outrageous situations. While the movie certainly delivers humorous moments, many viewers were surprised to discover that its emotional heart is much stronger than expected. Social media quickly filled with comments from people saying they came for the unusual premise but stayed because they genuinely cared about Owen and Ali's relationship. That kind of audience reaction often becomes an important factor in helping original films build positive word of mouth. One interesting aspect of the screenplay is how it avoids making either main character feel like a traditional romantic hero. Owen is not portrayed as the confident, charming man who always knows the right thing to say. Instead, he hesitates, overthinks situations, and often doubts himself. These qualities make him relatable because many people recognize those same feelings in their own lives. Likewise, Ali is not written as someone who exists only to inspire the male lead. She has her own fears, ambitions, disappointments, and emotional struggles. Throughout the story, both characters grow together rather than one person saving the other. This balanced approach makes the romance feel much more authentic. The dialogue also deserves recognition because it feels natural instead of overly dramatic. Many romantic films rely on long speeches about destiny or soulmates, but One Night only keeps its conversations grounded. Owen and Ali often speak in awkward, unfinished sentences, interrupt each other, laugh at themselves, and admit when they don't know what to say. These small details create the feeling that two real people are slowly becoming comfortable around each other rather than performing perfectly written movie dialogue. The film also explores how modern society often encourages people to chase immediate satisfaction instead of lasting happiness. Throughout the fictional annual event, countless background characters appear focused only on temporary excitement. In contrast, Owen and Ali gradually discover that meaningful relationships require patience, trust, honesty, and emotional vulnerability. The movie never directly criticizes modern dating culture, but it quietly asks whether people sometimes become so focused on finding quick happiness that they forget to build genuine emotional connections. Another filmmaking strength is the way lighting changes throughout the story. At the beginning of the night, bright neon signs, colorful streets, and crowded public spaces dominate the screen. As the hours pass, the city becomes quieter, the lighting softens, and the atmosphere grows more intimate. By the time sunrise approaches, the visual style reflects the emotional transformation of the characters. The city itself seems calmer, mirroring the fact that Owen and Ali have finally stopped running from their feelings. From an editing perspective, the movie carefully balances energetic comedy with slower emotional moments. Fast paced sequences involving crowded streets and unexpected encounters are often followed by quieter conversations that allow the audience to understand the characters on a deeper level. This rhythm prevents the film from becoming repetitive and keeps viewers emotionally engaged throughout its running time. One topic that generated significant online discussion was whether the movie could eventually become a cult classic. History has shown that some films receive mixed reviews when first released but later develop passionate fan communities. Because One Night only presents such an original concept while focusing on universal themes like love, loneliness, and second chances, many movie fans believe it has the potential to gain greater appreciation over time. Whether that prediction becomes reality will depend largely on how audiences continue responding in the months and years ahead. The performances from the supporting cast also become more meaningful upon repeat viewing. Small conversations, background interactions, and brief appearances often contain subtle observations about relationships and human behavior that viewers may miss during their first watch. This attention to detail rewards audiences who decide to revisit the film. Perhaps the most memorable lesson presented by One Night Only is that life rarely gives people perfect opportunities. Waiting for the perfect moment often means missing the chance completely. Owen and Ali eventually realize that uncertainty is part of every meaningful relationship. No government rule, social tradition, or carefully planned schedule can guarantee happiness. The only thing people can truly control is whether they are willing to take an emotional risk when the opportunity appears. The final scenes reinforce this message by emphasizing hope instead of certainty. Rather than suggesting that love automatically solves every problem, the movie acknowledges that relationships require continuous effort, communication, forgiveness, and mutual respect. This realistic perspective gives the ending an emotional sincerity that many romantic comedies struggle to achieve. As conversations about One Night only continued after its release, many film fans began comparing it with classic romantic comedies from previous decades. While the movie's central idea is completely modern and intentionally outrageous, its emotional structure feels surprisingly old fashioned. At its heart, the story is about two strangers meeting by chance, slowly learning to trust each other, overcoming misunderstandings, and ultimately discovering that genuine love often appears when it is least expected. This timeless storytelling formula allows the movie to feel familiar even though the fictional world surrounding it is unlike anything audiences have seen before. One reason the relationship between Owen and Ali works so well is because neither character immediately believes they have found the one. Instead of falling in love after only a few conversations, both spend much of the night questioning their own feelings. They wonder whether they are simply reacting to the emotional atmosphere created by the annual event or whether the connection they feel is something truly meaningful. This uncertainty gives the romance a level of realism that many romantic comedies overlook. Love in this film develops gradually through shared experiences, honest conversations, and emotional vulnerability rather than instant attraction alone. The screenplay also explores how fear influences people's decisions. Owen is afraid of experiencing heartbreak again after his previous relationship. Ali fears investing emotionally in someone she barely knows. Around them, many supporting characters hide behind humor, confidence, or temporary excitement because they are also afraid of rejection and loneliness. The film quietly suggests that fear often prevents people from finding happiness more than bad luck ever does. This psychological theme remains present throughout the story without becoming overly dramatic. Another impressive aspect of the production is how effectively it captures the feeling of a city that never truly sleeps. Even during quieter scenes, distant traffic, subway sounds, conversations, music, and streetlights remind viewers that millions of lives continue moving around the main characters. This constant background activity reinforces one of the movie's central ideas. Every person has their own story, and life changing moments often happen while the rest of the world carries on without noticing. The costume and makeup departments also contribute to the storytelling in subtle ways. As the night progresses, the characters' appearances naturally change. Hair becomes less perfect, clothing becomes slightly wrinkled, and makeup becomes more natural. These realistic details help show the passage of time while making the characters feel increasingly human. By sunrise, Owen and Ali no longer look like people trying to impress strangers. They simply look like two exhausted individuals who have shared an unforgettable experience together. The screenplay includes several recurring visual motifs that attentive viewers may notice. Doors opening and closing frequently symbolize new opportunities or missed chances. Bridges represent emotional transitions between fear and trust. Reflections in windows and mirrors suggest the difference between who the characters pretend to be and who they truly are. Although these visual symbols are never directly explained, they add another layer of meaning for viewers who enjoy analyzing filmmaking techniques. One element that has received widespread praise is the balance between comedy and sincerity. Many romantic comedies struggle because they lean too heavily toward either exaggerated humor or excessive melodrama. One Night only generally avoids both extremes. Funny situations arise naturally from the unusual circumstances, while emotional scenes remain grounded in believable conversations and recognizable human emotions. This balance helps maintain the audience's emotional investment throughout the film. As discussion spread online, viewers also began debating the movie's hidden social commentary. Some interpreted the fictional annual event as a satire of modern dating culture, where people often prioritize quick experiences over meaningful relationships. Others believed the film was commenting on how governments and social institutions sometimes attempt to regulate deeply personal aspects of human life. Still, others argued that the movie was simply using an outrageous concept as an entertaining backdrop for a love story. The fact that so many different interpretations exist demonstrates that the screenplay leaves room for audiences to draw their own conclusions. From a commercial perspective, industry analysts watch the movie closely because original romantic comedies have become less common in major theatrical releases. In recent years, many studios have focused on established franchises, sequels, and superhero films. One Night only represented a different approach by presenting audiences with an entirely original story. Regardless of its final financial performance, the film reminded both studios and moviegoers that original ideas can still generate excitement and discussion when supported by strong performances and effective marketing. Another fascinating observation is how different audiences respond to the ending. Some viewers see it as hopeful and uplifting because it emphasizes emotional courage over certainty. Others interpret it as bittersweet because the future remains unwritten, reminding us that real relationships continue long after the final scene. This ambiguity allows the story to remain with audiences even after they leave the theater, encouraging reflection rather than providing every answer. Ultimately, One Night only succeeds because it understands something simple but deeply human. Every person spends part of their life wondering whether one unexpected meeting could completely change their future. Most people have experienced moments when a random conversation, an accidental encounter, or a single decision altered the course of their lives forever. The film takes that universal experience and places it inside an unforgettable fictional setting, creating a romance that feels both imaginative and emotionally familiar. As the excitement surrounding One Night Only continued to grow, one of the biggest discussions among movie lovers was whether the film would still be remembered 5 or 10 years from now. Every year, dozens of romantic comedies are released, but only a few remain part of popular culture. Some survive because of unforgettable dialogue, others because of iconic performances, and a handful because they introduce an original idea that people continue talking about long after leaving the theater. One Night only has the advantage of starting with one of the most unusual concepts seen in a mainstream romantic comedy in recent years. Whether people loved it or questioned its premise, almost everyone agreed that it was impossible to confuse this movie with anything else released during the same season. The emotional journey of Owen and Ali becomes even more meaningful when viewed as a story about personal growth instead of simply romance. At the beginning of the film, both characters are emotionally trapped by experiences from their past. Owen believes that opening his heart again will only lead to disappointment, while Ali worries that waiting for genuine love may leave her alone forever. Throughout the night, neither character changes because another person magically fixes them. Instead, they slowly discover the confidence to confront their own fears. This approach gives the relationship emotional maturity because both individuals grow independently before they fully trust each other. The screenplay also explores the idea that a society often creates artificial deadlines for happiness. People are constantly told they should find love by a certain age, build successful careers within a specific timeline, or achieve personal milestones according to expectations created by others. The fictional annual event exaggerates this pressure to an extreme level, forcing people to believe that one particular night determines their happiness. Owen and Ali gradually reject this mindset. Their connection develops because they stop focusing on the deadline and begin paying attention to each other. In that sense, the film quietly argues that meaningful relationships cannot be scheduled. From a filmmaking perspective, the sound design deserves more attention than it initially receives. Throughout the movie, background noises subtly reflect the emotional state of the characters. Loud music, traffic, crowds, and celebrations dominate scenes filled with confusion and uncertainty. During more intimate moments, these sounds become quieter, allowing small details such as footsteps, breathing, and natural conversation to create a feeling of closeness. This careful use of sound helps viewers become emotionally connected without realizing how much the audio contributes to the storytelling. Another technical achievement is the pacing of the dialogue. Instead of filling every scene with constant conversation, the screenplay allows moments of silence to carry emotional weight. Owen and Ali occasionally sit together without speaking, simply observing the city around them. These quiet pauses communicate just as much as their conversations, reminding audiences that genuine comfort with another person often requires no words at all. Such scenes demonstrate confidence from both the director and the actors who trust that simple expressions and body language can communicate powerful emotions. As reviews continued to appear, many critics highlighted the performances as the film's greatest strength. Even reviewers who expressed concerns about the screenplay or the fictional world generally praised Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner for bringing sincerity to their characters. Their natural chemistry helps audiences accept the unusual premise because the emotional relationship at the center feels authentic. Without convincing performances, the movie's high concept idea might have struggled to connect with viewers on a personal level. The internet also played an important role in shaping public opinion. Short video clips, reaction videos, reviews, and discussions spread rapidly across social media platforms. Some creators focused on explaining the movie's fictional rules, while others analyzed hidden themes, symbolism, and character development. Fan theories also began appearing online, with viewers debating unanswered questions about the alternate society shown in the film. Although not every theory was supported by the screenplay, these discussions demonstrated that audiences remained engaged with the story long after watching it. Another reason the movie sparked debate is that it refuses to clearly label its fictional society as either entirely good or entirely bad. Some citizens appear happy with the annual tradition, believing it creates excitement and freedom. Others quietly question whether the system has actually improved people's lives or simply encouraged superficial relationships. By refusing to present a simple answer, the screenplay invites audiences to examine their own beliefs rather than accepting a single interpretation. This openness has helped generate continued discussion among both critics and fans. One particularly memorable aspect of the movie is its optimistic tone. Even while exploring themes such as loneliness, heartbreak, fear, and uncertainty, the story never becomes hopeless. Instead, it repeatedly reminds viewers that unexpected opportunities can appear when they least expect them. Owen and Ali's journey suggests that emotional healing often begins with a simple willingness to trust another person again. This hopeful message gives the film an uplifting quality without ignoring the challenges that real relationships inevitably face. Looking at the film as a whole, One Night only succeeds because it combines originality with emotional familiarity. The fictional premise immediately captures attention, but the characters and their personal struggles keep audiences invested. Viewers may disagree about the effectiveness of the world building or the social satire, yet the central relationship remains sincere enough to carry the story from beginning to end. In a cinematic landscape increasingly dominated by established franchises, the movie demonstrates that original romantic stories can still surprise audiences when supported by strong performances, thoughtful direction, and meaningful emotional themes. When people look back at romantic comedies released in 2026, One Night Only will likely be remembered as one of the year's boldest original ideas. Whether audiences loved every aspect of the film or remained divided about its unusual premise, very few could deny that it attempted something different. In an era where many major releases rely on established franchises, sequels, and familiar intellectual properties, an original romantic comedy built around a completely new fictional concept immediately stood out. That originality became one of the movie's greatest strengths because it encouraged audiences to enter the theater without already knowing exactly how the story would unfold. One of the film's most effective qualities is how it portrays emotional vulnerability. Modern romantic comedies sometimes avoid genuine emotional honesty because they prioritize constant jokes or exaggerated situations. One Night only takes a different approach. The screenplay repeatedly places Owen and Ali in situations where they must admit uncomfortable truths about themselves. They acknowledge past mistakes, disappointments, regrets, and fears without pretending to have perfect answers. These moments create emotional authenticity because viewers recognize similar conversations from their own lives. Relationships rarely succeed because people say all the right things. More often, they succeed because people become willing to reveal the parts of themselves they normally try to hide. The movie also quietly examines the difference between attraction and compatibility. Throughout the fictional annual celebration, countless characters appear focused on immediate physical attraction. Owen and Ali, however, slowly discover that genuine compatibility develops through shared values, similar emotional experiences, and mutual understanding. This distinction becomes one of the film's most meaningful themes. Physical attraction may create the first conversation, but emotional compatibility determines whether that conversation grows into something lasting. The screenplay never directly states this lesson, allowing viewers to reach the conclusion naturally as the relationship develops. Another impressive achievement is the consistency of the performances. Romantic comedies often become uneven if one lead actor carries more emotional weight than the other. Here, Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner maintain a balanced partnership throughout the film. Each actor receives moments of humor, vulnerability, frustration, hope, and emotional growth. Neither performance overshadows the other, allowing the audience to become equally invested in both characters' journeys. This balance strengthens the central relationship and helps the emotional payoff feel earned rather than forced. The film's visual storytelling also deserves additional recognition. Throughout the night, the camera frequently captures city lights reflected in rain soaked streets, subway windows, restaurant glass, and building exteriors. These reflections subtly reinforce the movie's recurring idea that people often hide their true emotions behind carefully constructed public images. As Owen and Annie become more honest with each other, these visual barriers gradually disappear and the cinematography begins using clearer, more open compositions. Although many viewers may not consciously notice these choices, they contribute significantly to the film's emotional atmosphere. One recurring discussion among critics involved the screenplay's balance between satire and romance. Some reviewers believe the movie should have explored the political consequences of its fictional society more deeply. Others argued that doing so would have distracted from the emotional relationship at the center of the story. Director Will Gluck appears to have intentionally chosen the second approach. Rather than explaining every detail of the alternate world, he focuses almost entirely on how ordinary people navigate that environment while searching for happiness. This creative decision may divide opinions, but it keeps the film emotionally focused from beginning to end. Audience reactions also highlighted the movie's rewatch value. Many viewers reported noticing additional details during a second viewing, including visual callbacks, recurring dialogue, background interactions, and symbolic imagery that seemed less obvious the first time. These subtle layers reward attentive audiences and encourage continued discussion among fans who enjoy analyzing filmmaking techniques beyond the main plot. Another interesting topic is the movie's treatment of coincidence. Romantic stories often rely on unbelievable coincidences to bring characters together, yet One Night Only repeatedly asks whether coincidence alone is enough. The screenplay suggests that unexpected meetings create opportunities, but personal choices determine whether those opportunities become meaningful relationships. Owen and Ali repeatedly encounter situations where they could easily walk away from each other. Their eventual connection results not from destiny alone but from a series of conscious decisions to remain open, honest, and emotionally available. As the film continues to reach wider audiences, it may also inspire conversations about the future of romantic comedies. For many years, the genre has struggled to achieve the same theatrical success it enjoyed in previous decades. Streaming platforms became the primary home for many romantic stories, while cinemas increasingly focused on action films and established franchises. One Night only demonstrates that audiences still appreciate original romance when filmmakers combine creative ideas with emotionally engaging characters. Whether or not it becomes a major commercial success, the movie represents an encouraging example of studios investing in fresh storytelling rather than relying exclusively on familiar brands. Looking beyond its fictional setting, the movie ultimately delivers a surprisingly universal message. Every generation experiences uncertainty about love, timing, and human connection. Technology changes, social expectations evolve, and cultural traditions shift, yet people continue searching for the same basic things: understanding, acceptance, trust, and companionship. Owen and Ali's journey reminds viewers that while circumstances may become more complicated, the emotional foundations of meaningful relationships remain remarkably consistent. In the end, One Night Only is not remembered simply because it imagined a strange annual event. It is remembered because beneath that imaginative concept lies a deeply human story about hope, second chances, emotional courage, and the belief that sometimes a single unexpected night really can change the direction of an entire life. One Night Only is an upcoming American romantic comedy movie that is set to arrive in theaters in the United States on August 7, 2026. It is being made by Universal Pictures and comes from a production company called Olive Bridge Entertainment. The movie is directed by Will Gluck, a filmmaker known for making romantic comedies, and he also helped write the script alongside a writer named Travis Braun. Travis Braun actually came up with the original story and wrote the first version of the screenplay on his own before Gluck came on board to rework parts of it. What makes this movie stand out even before its release is the story behind the script itself. Travis Braun's screenplay was so well liked in Hollywood that it topped the 2024 Blacklist. For people who don't follow the entertainment industry closely, the Blacklist is basically an annual list where industry professionals such as producers and executives vote on the best movie scripts that haven't been turned into films yet. Landing at the very top of that list is a big deal because it means that out of all the unproduced screenplays circulating around Hollywood that year, this particular script was seen as one of the most loved and talked about. That kind of buzz is often what convinces a major studio to pick a project up and get it made, and that's exactly what happened here, with Universal Pictures deciding to bring it to the big screen. The basic idea behind the movie is a romantic comedy premise built around a fictional rule. There is supposedly one night each year when sex before marriage becomes legal, and the story follows two strangers who cross paths on that very night and try to find love. It's a high concept idea, meaning the plot is built around one unusual and eye catching rule or situation, which is a common approach in comedy filmmaking because it gives writers a lot of room to build funny and awkward situations around the main characters. The two lead roles are played by Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner. Monica Barbaro plays a character named Ali, and Callum Turner plays a character named Owen. These two actors are the central couple that the entire story revolves around, since the movie follows their chance encounter and whatever happens between them over the course of that one important night. Around the two leads, the movie has put together a fairly large and well known supporting cast. This includes Maya Hawke, Julia Fox, Molly Ringwald, LeVar Burton, Esteheim, Zive, King Princess, Ben Marshall, and Nicholas Braun. Molly Ringwald and LeVar Burton are both well established actors who have been recognizable names in film and television for a long time, so their involvement adds a bit of extra weight and recognition to the cast list. The rest of the supporting actors, including musicians and comedians who have branched into acting, suggest the film is aiming for a cast that appeals to a mix of older audiences who grew up with actors like Ringwald and Burton, along with younger audiences who follow newer personalities like Zive, King Princess, and Ben Marshall. There's also a fun little detail involving a cameo appearance by a person known as Radio Man. Radio Man is a real New York City personality who has become famous over the years for showing up in the background or in small cameo roles in dozens of major Hollywood productions filmed in the city. His involvement is often seen as a small nod to New York film history, since many directors like to include him as something of a tradition or an inside joke for people who follow behind the scenes movie trivia. As for how the project came together, the timeline started in February 2025 when Universal Pictures officially announced that Will Gluck would direct the movie. At that point, it was described as an original comedy that had grown out of Travis Braun's script, the same one that had topped the Blacklist survey the year before. A few months later, in August 2025, it was announced that Monica Barbaro and Callum Turner had been cast as the two leads, and around the same time, it came out that Gluck was doing rewrites on the screenplay, meaning he was making changes and adjustments to the story before filming began. Filming itself, which in the industry is often called principal photography, started on September 26, 2025 and took place in New York City. It was during this filming period that Radio Man's cameo appearance was confirmed since he was spotted on set. As filming continued into October 2025, the production announced that Molly Ringwald and LeVar Burton had joined the cast as well, adding two more well-known names to the project. Then in December 2025, several more cast members were revealed all at once, including Maya Hawke, Julia Fox, Esteheim, Zive, and King Princess, rounding out much of the supporting cast. Later on in April 2026, it was confirmed that Nicholas Braun had also joined the movie, which was one of the final pieces of casting news to come out before the film's release. Putting all of this together, One Night Only is shaping up to be a starry romantic comedy with a clear pedigree behind it, thanks to its award winning script and a director who has experience in the genre, paired with a cast that blends major names with newer, buzzier talent. Since the movie is still unreleased as of the writing of this article, there isn't yet any information available about audience reactions, critic reviews, how much money it made at the box office, or a full breakdown of the plot beyond that central one night premise. That kind of information will only become available once the film has actually opened in theaters on its scheduled release date of August 7, 2026. Looking beyond the romance itself, One Night Only also succeeds because it understands something that many modern films overlook: the importance of ordinary conversations. There are no superheroes saving the world, no complicated mysteries that need solving, and no giant action sequences designed only to impress audiences with visual effects. Instead, the film places its confidence in two people learning about each other while walking through one of the busiest cities in the world. That creative decision makes every conversation feel meaningful. The audience watches Owen and Ali slowly move beyond polite introductions and begin discussing subjects that people usually avoid when meeting someone for the first time. They talk about disappointment, broken expectations, family pressure, personal regrets, and the fear of ending up alone. These conversations never feel forced because they grow naturally from the unusual circumstances surrounding them. As viewers spend more time with the characters, they begin to recognize pieces of themselves within these discussions. Nearly everyone has experienced moments of uncertainty about relationships, moments where they wondered if taking another emotional risk would lead to happiness or another painful disappointment. The screenplay understands this universal experience, and that is why its emotional scenes often feel more memorable than its comedic ones. Another aspect that deserves appreciation is the movie's patient storytelling. In today's entertainment landscape, many films move at an extremely fast pace because studios worry that audiences may lose interest if something dramatic is not happening every few minutes. One Night Only takes the opposite approach during several important sequences. Instead of constantly introducing new plot twists, the film allows emotional moments to develop slowly. Owen and Ali are often shown simply walking together through quiet streets, sitting on park benches, riding the subway, or watching the city from rooftops while discussing their lives. These scenes may appear simple, but they become some of the film's strongest moments because they give the audience time to understand who these characters really are. Rather than relying on spectacular events, the screenplay builds emotional investment through honesty, vulnerability, and gradual trust. By the time the story reaches its final act, viewers care about the outcome because they feel as though they have genuinely come to know these two people rather than simply watching fictional characters perform scripted scenes. The movie also raises interesting questions about how society influences personal decisions. Throughout the fictional annual event, countless people appear to make choices because they feel pressured by the expectations surrounding them rather than because those choices genuinely reflect their own desires. The celebration becomes a symbol of social pressure itself. Everyone seems to believe they must participate, fit in, or avoid missing out on what the rest of society considers important. Owen and Ali quietly reject this pressure. Their journey becomes less about participating in the annual event and more about discovering whether they can make decisions based on their own feelings instead of public expectations. This message feels surprisingly relevant because similar pressures exist in the real world. People often feel expected to reach certain milestones by particular ages, pursue specific careers, marry within certain timelines, or behave according to standards established by others. By exaggerating these expectations into a fictional national event, the film encourages audiences to question how much of their own lives are guided by genuine personal choice and how much is shaped by outside influence. The production design further strengthens this message through careful attention to detail. Throughout the city, advertisements, decorations, storefront displays, and public celebrations constantly remind characters that this is supposed to be the most important night of the year. Everywhere they look, Society reinforces the same expectation. This visual repetition subtly increases the emotional pressure felt by the characters without requiring lengthy explanations. Even background extras contribute to this atmosphere, behaving in ways that make the annual event feel like an established tradition deeply rooted within this fictional society. These production choices help create a believable world despite the highly unusual premise. Instead of spending valuable screen time explaining every historical detail, the filmmakers allow audiences to understand the setting simply by observing how ordinary citizens behave throughout the night. One particularly impressive element is how the screenplay avoids judging its characters too harshly. Many supporting characters make questionable decisions during the course of the evening, yet the film rarely portrays them as villains. Instead, it suggests that nearly everyone is simply trying to find happiness in the only ways they know. Some search for excitement, others seek companionship, while many are simply afraid of loneliness. This compassionate perspective prevents the movie from becoming overly cynical. Even characters who appear shallow at first are occasionally given small moments that reveal deeper insecurities hiding beneath their confident personalities. These brief glimpses remind viewers that outward appearances rarely tell the complete story of another person's emotional life. From a technical standpoint, the editing deserves additional praise because it successfully maintains tension throughout a story that contains relatively little traditional action. Each transition between locations reinforces the feeling that precious time continues slipping away. As sunrise approaches, the editing rhythm becomes noticeably quicker, creating subconscious urgency within the audience. The characters may only be walking from one neighborhood to another, but the pace of the editing makes those simple journeys feel increasingly significant. Every delayed conversation, every missed opportunity, and every unexpected interruption seems capable of permanently changing the outcome of the story. This careful manipulation of pacing demonstrates that suspense does not always require danger. Sometimes emotional uncertainty can create tension every bit as powerful as physical conflict. Another topic worth discussing is the movie's approach to hope. Many contemporary stories choose darker endings because filmmakers believe realism requires disappointment. One Night only takes a more balanced position. It acknowledges heartbreak, loneliness, regret, and uncertainty without allowing those emotions to completely overwhelm the narrative. The screenplay repeatedly suggests that optimism is not the result of ignoring life's difficulties, but of choosing to remain emotionally open despite previous pain. Owen and Ali both carry emotional scars from their past experiences, yet neither character allows those experiences to permanently define their future. Their willingness to trust again becomes one of the movie's most inspiring messages. Rather than promising that love always succeeds, the story argues that refusing to take emotional risks guarantees loneliness far more effectively than any failed relationship ever could. Perhaps the film's greatest achievement is that it transforms an outrageous fictional concept into a surprisingly intimate examination of human connection. Long after viewers stop thinking about the unusual laws governing this alternate society, they continue remembering the conversations, the emotional honesty, and the quiet moments shared between two strangers who unexpectedly change each other's lives. That emotional resonance is ultimately what separates memorable romantic films from forgettable ones. While opinions may continue differing about the effectiveness of the movie's satire or world building, there is little doubt that its central relationship provides a sincere emotional foundation capable of connecting with audiences across different cultures and generations. In the end, One Night only reminds viewers that life is often transformed not by extraordinary events themselves, but by the ordinary people we happen to meet while those events unfold. One of the most remarkable aspects of One Night Only is the way it transforms an entire city into a living part of the story. New York is not simply the backdrop where the events happen. It almost behaves like another character that constantly influences the decisions of everyone on screen. Every neighborhood offers a different mood, every street corner presents another unexpected encounter, and every crowded subway station reminds the audience that millions of lives are moving forward at exactly the same moment. Owen and Ellie may believe their story is unique, but the film quietly suggests that countless other people are experiencing equally important moments during the same night. This perspective makes the romance feel both intimate and universal. It reminds viewers that behind every stranger walking through a crowded city is a personal story filled with dreams, disappointments, hopes, and fears that remain invisible to everyone else. That idea gives the film an emotional richness that extends beyond the relationship between its two main characters. The screenplay also explores how quickly first impressions can change once people begin listening instead of judging. At the beginning of their journey together, Owen and Ali both make assumptions about each other based on appearance, behavior, and a few awkward conversations. Owen initially believes Ali is more confident and emotionally secure than she actually is, while Ali assumes Owen has simply become cynical after a failed relationship. As the hours pass, both discover that these first impressions are incomplete. They begin seeing each other as complicated individuals rather than simple stereotypes. This gradual discovery mirrors real relationships where genuine understanding develops only after people become willing to move beyond surface level conversations. In a world increasingly dominated by quick judgments through social media profiles and dating applications, the movie quietly argues that meaningful human connection requires patience and genuine curiosity. Another reason the film resonates emotionally is its treatment of regret. Throughout the night, several supporting characters briefly mention opportunities they failed to pursue in the past. Some regret ending important relationships too quickly. Others regret remaining silent when they should have expressed their feelings. A few admit that fear prevented them from making decisions that might have changed their lives forever. These conversations create an emotional backdrop for Owen and Ali's journey. The audience gradually realizes that the story is not simply about finding love, but about avoiding the painful burden of wondering what might have happened if they had allowed fear to control their choices. This universal fear of missed opportunities becomes one of the strongest emotional themes running beneath the romantic comedy. From a visual perspective, the film consistently uses movement to reflect emotional development. Early in the story, Owen and Ali are almost always walking quickly through crowded streets, constantly interrupted by distractions, traffic celebrations, and unexpected obstacles. Their conversations are often cut short because something external demands their attention. As their emotional connection grows stronger, the pace begins to slow. They spend more time sitting together, watching the city, sharing quiet moments, and allowing conversations to continue without interruption. This gradual shift in movement reflects the way emotional trust develops. Instead of rushing toward a destination, they begin appreciating the journey itself. The audience experiences these transformations almost subconsciously through the rhythm of the scenes. The cinematography deserves additional praise for its careful use of perspective. Wide shots frequently show Owen and Ali surrounded by enormous crowds, making them appear small within the massive city. These images reinforce feelings of loneliness and uncertainty despite being surrounded by thousands of people. Later in the film, the camera begins favoring closer compositions that emphasize facial expressions, eye contact, and subtle emotional reactions. As the characters become emotionally closer, the visual language also becomes more intimate. This gradual evolution demonstrates how cinematography can communicate emotional progress without requiring explicit dialogue. It is one of the quieter achievements of the film that may only become fully appreciated upon repeat viewing. Another fascinating element is how the screenplay balances optimism with realism. Romantic comedies often face criticism for presenting unrealistically perfect relationships that ignore the complexities of everyday life. One Night only avoids this trap by acknowledging that emotional compatibility does not eliminate life's challenges. Owen and Ali never pretend that their future will be simple. Instead, they recognize that meaningful relationships require continuous effort, honest communication, patience, and mutual respect. Their connection feels hopeful precisely because it avoids promising perfection. The film understands that genuine love is not the absence of problems but the willingness to face those problems together. The supporting cast continues contributing important emotional perspectives throughout the story. Although most supporting characters appear only briefly, nearly every interaction teaches Owen and Ali something about themselves. Some characters serve as warnings about the consequences of emotional dishonesty. Others represent people who have successfully built lasting relationships by embracing vulnerability instead of avoiding it. Even humorous side characters often deliver surprisingly thoughtful observations hidden beneath comedic dialogue. These smaller moments help expand the movie's emotional themes without distracting from the central romance. As discussions continued online following the theatrical release, many viewers praised the movie's ability to spark conversations about modern relationships. Rather than presenting clear moral lessons, the screenplay invites audiences to examine their own experiences. Some viewers related most strongly to Owen's fear of repeating past mistakes, while others connected with Ali's determination to remain hopeful despite repeated disappointments. Couples who watched the movie together often reported discussing how the story reflected their own relationships and the choices that had shaped their lives. This ability to encourage personal reflection may become one of the film's most enduring qualities. Another important aspect of the movie is its refusal to rely on traditional romantic cliches. While it certainly embraces familiar elements of the genre, it often approaches them from unexpected angles. Instead of grand speeches delivered in dramatic locations, many emotional breakthroughs occur during ordinary conversations. Instead of spectacular declarations of love, the screenplay emphasizes smaller gestures of kindness, understanding, and emotional support. These understated moments often carry greater emotional impact because they feel achievable within everyday life. The audience leaves believing that meaningful relationships are built through countless small acts of care rather than a few dramatic gestures. Ultimately, One Night Only becomes much more than a film built around an unusual fictional premise. Beneath its imaginative world lies an honest exploration of loneliness, emotional healing, second chances, and the courage required to trust another person after experiencing disappointment. The movie reminds viewers that timing certainly influences life, but timing alone never determines happiness. People create their own futures through the choices they make, the risks they accept, and the willingness to remain emotionally open even when previous experiences have made that openness feel dangerous. It is this deeply human message that continues echoing long after the credits finish rolling, proving that behind one of the most unusual romantic comedy concepts in recent years lies a story that is ultimately about something every audience understands: the hope that somewhere, when least expected, an ordinary conversation might become the beginning of an extraordinary life. When examining One Night only more closely, it becomes clear that the film is not really asking audiences whether its fictional law could ever exist. Instead, it asks a much more personal question that almost everyone has faced at some point in life. How many opportunities have we allowed to disappear simply because we were afraid? That question quietly drives almost every important decision made by Owen and Ellie throughout the story. Fear appears in many different forms. Sometimes it is fear of rejection, sometimes it is fear of repeating past mistakes, at other times, it is the fear of trusting someone new after experiencing heartbreak. The screenplay repeatedly demonstrates that these fears are often far more powerful than any external obstacle. Even in a world filled with unusual laws and extraordinary circumstances, the greatest challenge remains convincing ourselves that taking another emotional chance is worth the risk. This emotional honesty gives the movie a level of maturity that many romantic comedies struggle to achieve. The film also deserves recognition for portraying modern relationships without becoming overly cynical. During the past decade, many romantic stories have focused heavily on failed relationships, emotional disappointment, and the difficulties created by technology and social media. One Night Only certainly acknowledges these realities, but it refuses to conclude that genuine love has become impossible. Instead, the screenplay suggests that while modern dating may be more complicated than ever, meaningful human connection remains possible when people become willing to communicate honestly. Owen and Ali do not find happiness because they possess extraordinary luck. They find happiness because they gradually stop pretending to be someone they are not. They admit their fears, acknowledge their mistakes, and allow themselves to become emotionally vulnerable despite knowing that vulnerability always carries the possibility of pain. This realistic optimism becomes one of the film's strongest emotional qualities. Another fascinating aspect of the screenplay is how carefully it develops emotional trust. Unlike many romances where characters suddenly fall in love after only a few dramatic moments, one night only allows trust to grow naturally. Every conversation adds another small piece to the relationship. Each shared memory, personal confession, awkward joke, and quiet silence slowly removes the emotional wall surrounding both characters. By the final act, the audience understands that their connection has not been created by destiny alone. It has been built conversation by conversation, decision by decision, and moment by moment. This gradual development makes the emotional climax feel earned because viewers have witnessed every important step along the journey rather than simply being told that two people belong together. The production team also deserves praise for creating a visual style that supports the emotional themes without becoming distracting. Throughout the movie, lighting changes almost continuously as the night progresses. Bright city lights dominate the early scenes, creating an atmosphere filled with excitement, uncertainty, and possibility. As the hours pass, quieter locations begin appearing more frequently. Rooftops overlooking the skyline, peaceful side streets, nearly empty subway stations, and early morning parks gradually replace crowded celebrations. These changing environments reflect the emotional transformation of the characters themselves. What begins as a story filled with external distractions slowly becomes an intimate exploration of two individuals discovering that genuine happiness often exists far away from the loudest celebrations. The screenplay also explores the difference between loneliness and solitude. At first glance, these ideas appear similar, but the film treats them very differently. Owen spends much of his life surrounded by other people while still feeling emotionally isolated. Ali has friendships and social connections, yet she quietly wonders whether anyone truly understands her. Their loneliness is not caused by physical isolation but by emotional distance. As they begin sharing their thoughts honestly, that loneliness gradually disappears even though their surroundings remain unchanged. The movie subtly reminds audiences that meaningful companionship depends less on the number of people around us and more on whether we feel genuinely understood by someone who chooses to listen. One of the most interesting technical achievements of the film is its ability to maintain emotional momentum despite taking place within such a limited time frame. Stories unfolding over a single night often struggle because there is little opportunity for significant character development. One night only avoids this problem by focusing almost entirely on emotional rather than chronological progression. Although only a few hours pass, Owen and Ali experience conversations and situations that force them to confront feelings they have avoided for months or even years. The audience accepts this accelerated emotional journey because the circumstances naturally encourage honesty. Knowing that time is limited pushes both characters toward conversations they might otherwise postpone indefinitely. Another important theme running throughout the movie is the unpredictability of life. The screenplay repeatedly demonstrates that carefully planned lives rarely unfold according to expectation. Owen almost certainly never imagined that an ordinary evening would completely alter his understanding of love. Ali did not expect a chance encounter to challenge everything she believed about relationships. Around them, countless supporting characters also experience unexpected moments that remind audiences how quickly life can change direction. These recurring examples reinforce one of the film's central messages. While people cannot control every event that happens to them, they can control how they respond when unexpected opportunities appear. As more audiences watch the movie, discussions increasingly focused on its emotional sincerity rather than its fictional premise. Many viewers admitted they entered the theater expecting outrageous comedy but left remembering quiet conversations, heartfelt performances, and surprisingly mature observations about relationships. This shift in audience perception demonstrates how effectively the film balances entertainment with emotional substance. The unusual concept may attract initial attention, but the characters ultimately become the reason people continue recommending the movie to others. The ending also benefits from avoiding excessive sentimentality. Rather than presenting love as a magical solution capable of eliminating every future difficulty, the film concludes by suggesting that meaningful relationships represent beginnings rather than endings. Owen and Ali leave the story with hope. but also with the understanding that genuine love requires ongoing effort. This realistic perspective strengthens the emotional impact because it respects the intelligence of the audience. Instead of promising impossible perfection, the movie celebrates the courage required to begin building something meaningful despite uncertainty about what the future may hold. Ultimately, One Night only succeeds because it recognizes that every memorable love story begins long before two people admit their feelings. It begins with personal growth, emotional healing, self reflection, and the willingness to become vulnerable despite previous disappointments. The fictional annual event may provide the backdrop, but the heart of the movie lies within the ordinary human experiences shared by Owen and Ali. Their journey reminds audiences that life changing moments rarely announce themselves in advance. Sometimes they arrive disguised as ordinary conversations with strangers. Sometimes they appear during the most unexpected nights imaginable. And sometimes the decision to remain open for just a little longer becomes the choice that quietly changes an entire lifetime. One of the most impressive achievements of One Night Only is that it never forgets the emotional journey hidden beneath its high concept premise. It would have been very easy for the filmmakers to rely entirely on the shocking idea behind the story and allow the audience to focus only on the fictional law. Instead, the screenplay continuously shifts attention back to its characters. Every major event, every unexpected interruption, and every humorous situation eventually serves one purpose: helping Owen and Ali understand themselves a little better. The annual event becomes less important as the night progresses because the emotional relationship slowly becomes the true center of the film. By the time sunrise approaches, many viewers almost forget the bizarre rules that introduced the story in the first place. Their attention has completely shifted toward whether these two people will finally overcome their fears before it becomes too late. One particularly interesting aspect of the screenplay is its exploration of emotional timing. Throughout life, people often meet the right person at the wrong moment. Sometimes careers take priority. Sometimes previous relationships leave emotional wounds that have not yet healed. Sometimes fear simply prevents people from recognizing opportunities standing directly in front of them. One Night only repeatedly returns to this idea. Owen and Ali are not simply searching for each other throughout the city. They are also searching for the right emotional version of themselves. At the beginning of the film, neither character is fully prepared to trust another person. Their experiences during the night gradually transform them into individuals capable of accepting the possibility of love again. In this sense, the movie suggests that timing is not only about meeting the right person, but also about becoming the right version of yourself. The film also quietly comments on how people often hide behind carefully created identities. Throughout the celebrations, many characters appear confident, successful, and completely comfortable with themselves. However, brief conversations reveal that many of them are struggling with insecurities, loneliness, or uncertainty. Owen and Ali slowly abandon these emotional masks as they spend more time together. They stop trying to impress each other and instead begin revealing the parts of themselves they normally keep hidden. This gradual removal of emotional barriers becomes one of the screenplay's most satisfying developments because it reflects the way genuine intimacy develops in real life. Real relationships rarely begin when people are pretending to be perfect. They begin when people become comfortable enough to admit that they are imperfect. From a visual standpoint, the movie makes excellent use of changing environments to mirror emotional progress. Early scenes are filled with bright advertisements, crowded sidewalks, loud music, and constant movement. Every location feels energetic but emotionally overwhelming. As the relationship deepens, quieter settings begin to dominate the narrative. Parks become more meaningful than parties. Rooftops become more memorable than restaurants. Empty streets become more romantic than crowded celebrations. This gradual movement away from chaos towards simplicity reinforces the idea that genuine happiness often appears when external distractions begin to disappear. The city remains alive throughout the entire film, but Owen and Ali gradually learn to focus less on everything happening around them and more on the person standing beside them. Another strength of the screenplay lies in its understanding of emotional healing. Healing is rarely presented as a dramatic transformation occurring within a single moment. Instead, the film portrays recovery as a series of small decisions. Owen does not suddenly forget his previous heartbreak. Ellie does not instantly overcome every fear she carries. Instead, both characters slowly realize that allowing painful memories to control every future decision only guarantees continued loneliness. The screenplay treats healing as an ongoing process rather than a destination, making the emotional journey feel honest and relatable. This realistic approach separates the film from more traditional romantic stories that often suggest love immediately solves every emotional problem. The supporting characters continue playing an important role in reinforcing these themes. Some serve as reminders of what happens when fear completely controls a person's decisions. Others represent individuals who have learned to embrace uncertainty rather than avoid it. Even brief conversations with strangers often contain observations about relationships that influence Owen and Ellie's perspectives. These smaller interactions create the impression that the entire city is quietly contributing to their emotional growth, even when the supporting characters never realize the impact they have made. One element that deserves additional recognition is the screenplay's use of humor during emotionally difficult moments. Instead of separating comedy from drama, the movie frequently combines them. Characters often laugh during uncomfortable conversations, make awkward jokes after revealing painful memories, or accidentally create humorous situations while attempting to express sincere emotions. This combination feels realistic because real life rarely separates happiness and sadness into completely different experiences. People often laugh while discussing serious subjects because humor helps them manage emotional vulnerability. By embracing this emotional complexity, the film creates characters who behave like recognizable human beings rather than idealized romantic heroes. The cinematography also becomes increasingly symbolic as sunrise approaches. Shadows gradually become shorter, natural light replaces artificial neon, and the visual palette shifts from colorful nighttime excitement toward the calm clarity of morning. This transition represents far more than the passage of time. It symbolizes emotional honesty replacing uncertainty. Throughout the night, both Owen and Ali struggle to understand their own feelings. As daylight arrives, emotional confusion begins giving way to clarity. The changing light quietly reflects the internal transformation both characters have experienced during the course of the story. Audience discussions following the release often highlighted how unexpectedly emotional the movie became during its final act. Many viewers admitted they entered the theater expecting little more than an entertaining romantic comedy but found themselves genuinely invested in the character's emotional journey. The combination of strong performances, patient storytelling, and relatable themes allowed the movie to connect with audiences on a deeper level than its marketing initially suggested. While opinions continued differing regarding the fictional world building, far fewer people questioned the sincerity of the central relationship. Owen and Ali's chemistry became the emotional anchor that kept viewers engaged from beginning to end. Perhaps the most lasting lesson presented by One Night Only is that life's most important opportunities rarely arrive under perfect circumstances. Waiting for complete certainty often means allowing meaningful experiences to pass by unnoticed. The film encourages viewers to embrace uncertainty, to communicate honestly, and to remain emotionally open even after experiencing disappointment. Love, according to the movie, is not something that appears only when every condition becomes ideal. It appears when imperfect people become brave enough to trust each other despite knowing that the future can never be completely guaranteed. Looking at the film as a whole, its greatest achievement lies in transforming a wildly imaginative fictional premise into a deeply personal story about hope, courage, vulnerability, and emotional resilience. Long after audiences stop discussing the unusual rules of its alternate society, they continue remembering two ordinary people who discovered that the greatest risk in life is not falling in love. It is allowing fear to convince us never to try again. That simple but powerful message gives One Night Only an emotional resonance that extends far beyond the boundaries of a traditional romantic comedy, ensuring that its story remains meaningful long after the final scene fades to black. As more people watched One Night Only, another interesting discussion began to appear among film critics and ordinary moviegoers alike. Instead of debating whether the story was realistic, many started asking a different question. What would happen if the movie's fictional law actually existed in the real world? Although the film never attempts to answer every social, political, or economic consequence of its unusual premise, audiences naturally became curious. Some imagined that businesses would completely transform their operations around the annual event. Hotels would likely be fully booked months in advance. Restaurants would prepare for record breaking crowds. Transportation systems would operate throughout the night, while security and emergency services would need to prepare for millions of people gathering in major cities. Even though the screenplay touches on only a small portion of this fictional society, viewers found themselves expanding the world through their own imagination. This ability to inspire conversation beyond the events shown on screen is often a sign that a film has introduced an idea powerful enough to remain in the audience's mind long after the credits roll. Another strength of the screenplay is how carefully it avoids turning Owen and Ellie into unrealistic fantasy characters. Neither of them possesses extraordinary talents, dramatic wealth, or unbelievable confidence. Owen struggles with ordinary insecurities that many people experience after emotional disappointment. He questions his own judgment, overthinks conversations, and constantly wonders whether taking another emotional risk is worth the possibility of being hurt again. Ellie faces different but equally relatable concerns. She worries that remaining hopeful in a world increasingly focused on temporary relationships might eventually leave her isolated. Instead of presenting either character as completely right or completely wrong, the screenplay treats both perspectives with compassion. Their emotional growth comes not from proving one person correct, but from learning to understand each other's fears without judgment. This balanced approach makes a romance feel far more believable than stories where one perfect individual magically transforms another. The film also examines how quickly assumptions can influence human relationships. During the first part of the story, both Owen and Ali frequently misunderstand each other's intentions. Small misunderstandings create emotional distance, while incomplete information leads them to draw inaccurate conclusions. As they continue talking, these assumptions gradually disappear. The screenplay quietly reminds viewers that many conflicts arise not because people intentionally hurt one another, but because they fail to communicate honestly. This emphasis on communication becomes one of the film's most practical messages. The fictional society may be impossible, but the emotional lessons about listening carefully, asking honest questions, and avoiding unnecessary assumptions feel completely grounded in everyday experience. From a filmmaking perspective, the production's attention to atmosphere deserves continued praise. Every location appears carefully chosen to reflect the emotional tone of each scene. Bright public spaces filled with music and celebration create excitement during moments of uncertainty, while quieter locations provide opportunities for deeper emotional conversations. Rooftops overlooking the city skyline become places of reflection rather than spectacle. Nearly empty streets before sunrise create a peaceful contrast with the overwhelming energy seen earlier in the night. These visual transitions allow audiences to feel the changing emotional rhythm without the screenplay needing to explain every emotional shift through dialogue alone. It is a subtle but highly effective example of visual storytelling supporting character development. The movie's pacing also demonstrates remarkable confidence. Rather than rushing toward dramatic conclusions, it allows emotional moments to unfold naturally. Long conversations are not interrupted simply to maintain excitement. Silence is permitted to exist between important lines of dialogue. Characters occasionally pause before responding because they are genuinely thinking about what they want to say. These small details create authenticity. Real relationships are rarely built through perfectly scripted speeches. They grow through unfinished thoughts, awkward pauses, nervous laughter, and moments where people struggle to express feelings that words cannot easily capture. The screenplay embraces this reality, making the emotional journey feel increasingly sincere as the story progresses. Another fascinating layer within the film is its exploration of emotional resilience. Both main characters enter the story carrying invisible emotional wounds. Previous disappointments have taught them to protect themselves by lowering expectations and avoiding vulnerability whenever possible. Throughout the night, however, they slowly discover that emotional protection often becomes emotional isolation. The walls they built to avoid future heartbreak have also prevented new happiness from entering their lives. This realization does not happen instantly. Instead, it develops gradually through repeated conversations and shared experiences. By the end of the story, neither character has become fearless. Instead, they have simply learned that courage does not require the absence of fear. True courage means choosing to move forward despite fear. This distinction becomes one of the screenplay's most inspiring emotional messages. The supporting performances continue adding subtle emotional depth throughout the narrative. Although many supporting characters appear only briefly, each interaction contributes another perspective on love, relationships, loneliness, or personal choice. Some characters unknowingly offer advice that influences Owen and Ellie's decisions later in the story. Others unintentionally demonstrate the consequences of allowing fear or impulsiveness to control every important decision. These seemingly minor encounters gradually shape the emotional landscape of the film, reinforcing its central themes without overwhelming the primary romance. As audience discussions continued expanding online, another pattern became noticeable. Many viewers described One Night only as a film that became stronger after they had time to reflect upon it. Unlike movies that rely mainly on shocking twists or spectacular action sequences, this story encourages quiet reflection. Days after watching the film, audiences often found themselves thinking about individual conversations, small gestures, or emotional decisions made by the characters. Some began reconsidering relationships from their own lives, wondering whether fear had prevented them from pursuing meaningful opportunities in the past. This lingering emotional impact may ultimately become one of the movie's greatest accomplishments. Entertainment provides temporary enjoyment, but stories that continue influencing personal reflection often leave a much deeper impression. The film also raises an interesting philosophical question without directly asking it. Are people truly searching for love, or are they searching for someone who makes them feel understood? Throughout the movie, Owen and Allie gradually realize that emotional understanding creates a stronger foundation than physical attraction alone. Their connection grows because each person feels genuinely heard and accepted without needing to pretend. In a world where many relationships begin through carefully constructed first impressions, the screenplay suggests that authenticity remains one of the rarest and most valuable qualities a person can offer another. Looking beyond its fictional setting, One Night Only ultimately becomes a celebration of emotional honesty. It argues that meaningful relationships are not created through perfect timing, social expectations, or carefully planned circumstances. Instead, they grow whenever two imperfect people decide that honesty is more important than self protection. This message resonates because it reflects experiences shared by audiences across different cultures, backgrounds, and generations. Everyone understands the fear of rejection, everyone understands the desire to be accepted exactly as they are. By focusing on these universal emotions rather than relying solely on its unusual premise, the film achieves something surprisingly rare. It transforms an imaginative romantic comedy into a thoughtful reflection on human connection itself. In the end, the lasting legacy of One Night Only may not depend on the fictional society it imagines, but on the emotional truth it quietly reveals. Opportunities often appear without warning. Life changing moments rarely arrive according to carefully prepared schedules. Sometimes an ordinary conversation changes everything. Sometimes one unexpected meeting becomes the beginning of an entirely different future. And sometimes the greatest decision a person ever makes is simply choosing not to let fear speak louder than hope. That timeless message gives the film an emotional power that extends well beyond its unique concept, ensuring that audiences remember not only the strange world they visited for one night, but also the deeply human story they experienced within it.